Hello, everyone. Welcome to
That's beautiful.
another Thursday night with ASMP Pittsburgh. Um, our guest tonight is Annie O'Neill. And as I was just saying, I have a little bit of history going back to if I remember correctly, the Bob Dole campaign. She may not remember this, but she gave this shiny new head some sunscreen at Point Park. And I never forgot that bit of kindness and always appreciated, especially sunscreen in the summertime. Um,
Pretty
and
much
then she's also been very kind to me and referred me for a couple of great assignments. And I assisted her once or twice on and I'll let her tell the story if she wants, on a very close talking ex-Steeler.
Should we start with
And,
that?
oh, yes.
It's a pretty funny story.
And then she owns 502 West North, which has the best photographic history that I know of, going back before Roy Engelbrecht. It was Roy's studio in the early 80s, but before that, it was a gentleman named Al Church who had that space, followed by Roy, followed by yours truly, and then I believe in proper order, Mark
Settle.
Bolster,
Oh, right.
Bill Suttle,
Jeez.
and Annie helped me with the most recent tenants, and then take it away. The show's yours.
Oh, good. Tom Little was there for a little while, and then Elizabeth Craig, and Michael Kent. I call him Misha. Uh, he's part of the crew here now. So Nancy and I pretty much use it, but it's a great space. The house was built in 1860, and really high ceilings, and it's just a neat old space. So Nancy and I bought the building in 2003, and we gutted it to the studs, and then um, have had it online for 15 years, something like that. So it's a great old place, but it's fun. Archie and I have talked about having a gallery of former photographers that have been here. So it'd be kind of fun. It's a great history.
And did you ever find the family members for Bill Suttle's negatives?
No, if anybody, we never threw away Bill's negatives. They are in our basement. And Archie claims there's a headshot of Christina Aguilera down, right? Is that it?
Well, I know Doherty Casting has Bill's headshot in their file. So I want to check to see if there's the balance of the shoot is there, or how many strippers from that era are documented.
If any of you don't know, Bill was the premier stripper photographer of Pittsburgh.
And he had his own publication towards the end too.
Oh, did he?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Little stars in place of pasties, strategically located.
And we haven't seen
Anyway.
any of those.
This is Annie's show. This is Annie's shows, not Bill's.
There'll be none of that. This is a rated G show. I have.
Wait, what about the garden? What about the garden? No, that's right. I'm sorry. I'll shut up.
It's all good.
I'm muting myself.
Annie, was the space always photographer spaces?
No, it was a single family home.
Okay.
So so we did a house history. It was built around 1860. It was a single family home. In 1920, a couple bought it, and he died in 1926, and she owned it for 40 years. Her name was Bertha Welton, for 40 years, and so we call the building Bertha, and we had to make a corporation name, and we called Bertha on the Park, since we're right across from West Park.
Oh, cool.
So that's why people always ask us why. But we had to pick a name that no one would have when you make a corporation, and so that's why we went with that.
You have studio space dedicated in
Yeah, it was. That's what Archie's saying. The second floor. It must have been a bedroom or sitting room or something, but it's nice. It has 12-foot ceilings and it's a little
Wow.
L shaped. And it was a different configuration when we bought it, but we gutted everything to the bone. We took out like 17 dumpsters of material from here.
Wow.
So in like 1960, somebody came in and put tons of drop ceilings and really bad carpet all over it.
Ooh. Ooh.
Never
Yeah.
put good
So
carpet.
we put it back to wood, and we put back the doors as best as we could, the front doors to what we think it was. We found an old picture to the twin building next door, so it's neat.
And removed all the paint and removed all the ivy that was growing on the side.
That's right. It was pool paint, so it took six treatments to get it off.
Ooh.
Really terrible yellow pool paint,
Ooh.
and
Blood
so
based.
yeah, I know. But it's a sharp looking building. Well, once things get back online, we'll have to have some kind of gathering here. Um, and yeah, and then actually more exciting, we have a place over on James Street that we've been renovating for the last 5 years. So that's actually even more exciting. That's more of a studio, dedicated studio space.
Okay.
So, but that's another story. Um, but I appreciate you asking me to speak, Archie, and everyone. Thank you. It's
Thanks for coming.
yeah. So I thought I would really concentrate on one thing, and I don't know. Did you give people a heads up, Archie? What I would be talking about?
I'm not sure if I
Okay. Well,
teased it at all. I know Jen might know what you're going to do, but
okay. Well, you know what? Over 20 years ago, I was in. So I was in Detroit 25 years ago, and I really wanted to get better at portraits. And so I decided I have to give myself a self-assigned something. And uh, I have been working on this project literally for 25 years. And it's, I guess, even 26. What happened is I I had been working on a story with one woman and her family. And I got to know her pretty well. I spent a good amount of time with her. And we went to a party, and she introduced me to her grandfather. And she said, "Oh, yeah, he's been a barber for a long time." And I think we all do this. You look at someone and you kind of guesstimate their age. And when I looked at him, I thought, he looks so young to be a grandfather. He looks like he's in his 60s and she was in her 40s. And so I was trying to figure it out. And she said, "Yeah, he's 95." And I was like, "What?" Like I just couldn't get over how old he was and how in great shape he was. And so I started talking to him, and he felt that he started working when he was like 16 as a barber. So he's a barber for a really long time. And it just struck me that, is it because he has such a strong sense of purpose? Was that helping him keep young? And my favorite thing, I do have a picture of him somewhere, but I cannot find it. But he had a toupee, and he's got this tiny little hole in his toupee right here, which I thought was really even better for a barber. But so I left Detroit maybe a month or two after meeting him. And so I decided, okay, I want to find more people that have devoted their life to one thing. And so when I was in Detroit, I mean, when I was here in Pittsburgh, I wasn't here very long, and I started finding people to photograph. And I just started asking around. And am I sharing my screen? Is that
not yet.
No, not yet.
okay? How about, wait, oh,
Green
there it
button
is.
on the
Sorry.
bottom. There you
Okay, there we go. So, and so wait a minute. No, I did the wrong thing. I think it's Apple L. Um, so there he is. So this is Umberto Buccigrossi, and he was the first person that I found. I just started asking around, and I went up to Eddie's. I don't know if you all remember Eddie's up in the hill, and because somebody sent me to him, and he's like, I'm not even 50 years old, or maybe he was 52. So, but he said, you have to go talk to this cobbler, Umberto. And so if any of you know Chiefs, the bar is Chiefs.
Yeah.
They haven't, his shop was right where Chiefs is next door, but now they've added it on. And so Umberto was the first person I photographed here in Pittsburgh, and he was a cobbler since he was 8 years old. And it turned out that I couldn't have picked a better person to photograph first, because he was super excited. And I had a show at Filmmakers with this, and it's how I started it. But it is important that I brought in a Hasselblad. I brought in a nice light, so the Hasselblad's on a tripod, and he's just at his counter, and we're just talking. And but when he saw the bigger camera and the nice light, he said, "You make me feel like a king." That to take this time. He was super modest, but he was a pillar of the community. He was there. He was a cobbler for over 70 years, but he was at this one spot for over 50 years over in Oakland. And so when I did this on my own time, but then I found out that he was closing his shop, and I ended up doing a picture story on the shop closing for the Post-Gazette. And it was really touching. I mean, the women from Pitt came in with a diploma and made it very formal. Said, "Whereupon the betterment of our feet, or the great care to our feet for this." It was beautiful how they came in and put it on parchment, things like that. And even as a side note, David Letterman found out about it, and he called the reporter and said, "Is this guy as good as he seems?" And we said, "Absolutely, he's great." And so Letterman called him and asked if he'd come on his show. And he said, "I'll only go if Ellen and Annie come with me." And so we ended up going to New York. We didn't go on the show, but we went in the limo with him, and we were in the green room. It was pretty fun. So that was fun. So so Umberto kind of started it all with that. He was wonderful. He was gracious, and he was really enthusiastic about it. So it was fantastic. Oh, wait a second. I thought it would go to the next one. Darn it. Hold on. Let me see if I can do this. So then I just started going around the city and trying to find other people. And this is Tony the tailor. He was over in Lawrenceville forever. And he would start at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and the people in the neighborhood, they'd just see his light on, and they would know he's there. I think this is a realtor now. I'm almost sure it is. It's over just before the cemetery, just before the entrance of the cemetery. So it was just a pleasure just to spend time with these people, just figure out the best spot. And now this I didn't light. I just went with natural lighting, but just I wanted to get the feel of the place. And and he talked about being tired, and I felt like it was incredibly lucky that the jacket that there's in front kind of looks a little tired. But again, he was another guy that people loved him, and they'd see his light on, and they'd toot the horn going by, and you kind of heard it all, whenever you were there. If I got there early, but that was a signal that he was in working. Now I'm gonna see if I can. Darn it! Let me see another way here. I know there's a way you can do it that'll just go to. That's actually the last one. Let me get out of this. Sorry, everyone. Maybe it's this. Let's try this way.
Try the left and right arrows or the space bar.
Yeah, space bar. There it is. Now I've got it. So just going around, this is up in Harmony. Two brothers feed feed store up there. And I saw these guys in the background. They were customers, and I asked them just to stay there. Um, but they were wonderful, and a lot of like these guys didn't. They were so hesitant, and they were a little skeptical, but just kept at it. Um, they were great. I did go back to Detroit for this. So this was tough because this is literally at noon, and I'm sure all of us, if we had a chance to do it over again, but this is at the River Rouge plant in Detroit.
Wow.
And this guy has a phenomenal story. His name is Mattel Dawson, and he was a forklift operator, and he saved all of his overtime, and he literally donated $1 million to with his overtime pay to Wayne State University, and they made him an honorary doctorate. Sorry,
So
they gave
cool.
him a doctorate. So when I found out, I think I heard his story on NPR or something like that. So, but this was going to the River Rouge plant, and I worked in Detroit, and I'd never been there, but I had to go back and get him. He was fantastic. Just he was on the news a good bit actually, because he kept going, he kept donating. But that was a great trip to go back to Detroit. This is just up the street. Or I don't know if any of you are familiar with Hip Flashlight. It's now
Yeah.
Hip. It's now a venue, party venue, and this is when the flashlight company is still in production. And this is one of the I can't remember his name. I'd have to look in my notes, but he worked there forever. And what was great is there was a secretary that he beat by like a year or two, and she was. I'd said I'd go back, but I think the place closed. I do regret not keeping up with her, but he loved that he beat her out, because he was there like 51 years and she was there 48 or 49, whatever it was. But he's checking the flashlights. They would check them. So, but it was like going back in time there. So, uh, so that was pretty neat. See you again. Oh, sorry, I didn't crop that one. I've
Her.
Yeah, no, the white space. But does anyone know who this is?
Dr. Mary.
Yeah, exactly. So this is one of the funnest people I photographed for her. So she is an archaeologist, and uh, she just laughed and laughed. I mean, she just amused herself. But what is neat about it is she actually works with really teeny tiny bones. Like her specialty is in China with like mice. But she's like, come on, let's go down to the big bones. That's what anybody, that's all people really want to see. So that's pretty much what she's laughing at. But she just entertained herself. But she's been around a long time, and I think she might have been emeritus at this point. But uh, who knew her?
I did, Dave.
Oh, Dave. Did
'Cause
you photograph her?
yes, I did.
She's a delight, isn't she?
She was absolutely a joy.
Yeah, exactly. That's I love that it really comes through with this. So actually, there's another one. I have a couple of doubles, and there's a very funny picture with a little dinosaur on a filing cabinet, and she's going like this, like the I should put that in because it's pretty funny. Um, but she's great. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so this is trying to do something a little different that instead of just photographing someone's face is this is I think it's Bill Peitel. I know his last name is Peitel, but I've read a column Brian O'Neill wrote about him. And so he was a bookbinder down in the South Side for a long, long time. And I went in and I was just looking around, and I felt like that spine of the book was like his hand. He had one of his thumbs chopped off when he wasn't there all that long, just a few years. But he loved it and he stuck with it. So this wasn't just trying something different than photographing a face. So I've done it a couple times. I think the next one too. And actually, this is super close to where you are, Elliot. This was in Connecticut. This is a tobacco farmer in Connecticut. So, and my a friend of mine worked at a newspaper there, and she would send me stories like this. That's how I discovered him. Which when I was there, I think the next one, oh no, there's a Fuller Brushman, but he'll be coming up. But this is in Ohio, and this is Dorsal Bibby, and he is just his name, his whole entire story is truly remarkable. He's a grave digger, and he was, I believe, 17 years old, maybe 18 years old, and he was with his dad, and they pulled into some store, and the town gravedigger pulled up next to them. His he and his next to him and his father, and he said, "My assistant uh, isn't is sick today. I need to help her." So his dad said, "Why don't you help him, Dorsal?" And he stuck with him for. I mean, he was a gravedigger for like 60 something years, but the man that taught him how to build, dig graves, his name is Vern Shields, and he dug Vern's grave like 12 years later. So, but this is the most amazing thing to me is that is a hand dug grave. That is Dorsal in a
Wow.
grave in Ohio. And all it is are with those items that are around him, a pickaxe, a shovel, a folding ruler, and a bucket. And so every time I saw this, I was just blown away by it. I mean, I've seen him. This is not machine.
So
So
perfect. My
yeah,
God,
exactly. That's what's
Lord.
yeah. And so people knew him, and they would specifically request for him to dig their grave. And
Wow.
and the way he kept at it was a lot of the cemeteries in Ohio were super small, so they couldn't bring in a backhoe. So now this one is obviously plenty of room, but you know, some people wanted him to hand dig it. Like it was um, a request, like a last request. So he was. I mean, he worked in like 22 different cemeteries around his house. But every time I look at the picture, I think people aren't going to believe me that this is, all hand dug. It's so perfect.
It's
So that
artisanal.
was. I'm sorry.
It's artisanal.
Yeah. Right. Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's outrageous.
Annie, how long would it take him to do that?
Oh, couple hours.
No
And
way.
yeah,
Wow.
and a couple,
Hours.
yeah, and
I'd be at that for a week.
well, right, and you know what else is interesting? I believe he was paid maybe $400 or $500, I think, but say like it was $300. But I mean, it was significant, which he deserved. But I talked to a funeral director, and he said, it's really amazing because we'll get these young guys. They'll come in here and they go, it's $400, $500, and they were all excited, and they couldn't even last a day. They would just be exhausted. Um, so he had a tough time getting an apprentice, and he literally just started off the cuff, just helping Vern. So and he was had interesting things to say where he says the young guy at the funeral home says I should retire, I shouldn't work, and then he did have a young guy helping him. He said that guy tells me that if I stop working, I'll be dead in a year. And so it's this tough decision to make because you hear the story a lot. Somebody retires and they don't do so well. Um, but all these folks were super dedicated. This is a woman named Diamond Tooth Mary. A friend of mine worked this is in Florida at a nursing home, but she's a pretty well-known singer. Her, I believe, it was her second cousin or her cousin. No, it was her half sister. Was Bessie Smith, and she literally ran away from home and jumped on a moving train and joined the circus. And can you see her teeth?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So she was one of the first people to do this, to kind of go out all out on bling. But
What a great
She,
portrait. Wow.
well, thank you. She was really a delight to meet too. I mean, actually, all these people are. They all have these remarkable stories.
Great stories, Annie. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, they really. I mean, they just are incredible. And there's more to it too than like what I'm trying. So I'm actually working on this for my thesis. I had a fellowship at Ohio University way too many years ago, but I'm trying to finish my thesis, and this is what I'm doing it on. So I'm looking into um, the history of retirement, um, working, having that strong sense of purpose, what it does. I think all of us do something that we're really in love with, and does it actually add years to our life or the quality of our life?
Have you,
So, I'm
have you
sorry.
have you written the stories down yet?
Yeah, a lot of them. I do regret that I didn't video or actually record. I have a couple that I have,
Well,
but
it wasn't so easy before.
oh, I'm sorry.
It wasn't so easy before.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I am a little. I love to just be doing one thing. So, but I am trying to expand on it and do it because they do have phenomenal stories. Now, a lot of these folks have passed away too. Um, but uh, she was another. I believe I found out about her that a friend of mine worked at the paper nearby, and I went down to Florida um, to meet her. Okay, this is the Fuller Brush Band. This was in West Hartford actually, um, and and again, a friend of mine worked at the paper, and she saw somebody doing a story on him, and he was great. His name is Milton Tempkin, and I mean crazy about his tie. But what he has is so do you all know what a Fuller Brush Man is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these
Traveling
guys,
salesman.
oh sorry.
Traveling salesman, right?
Exactly. And they were really famous that they knock on the door and they go, Fuller Brush Man. And so they did hair brushes and scrubbing brushes and all. They were famous for it. And this is a vegetable cleaner, oversized vegetable cleaner. It's like their number one seller of the history of Fuller Brush.
And it
And
looks like his head.
what?
And it looks like his head.
I know exactly, right?
Because
Clean his
I
ears
mean,
out
did you
pretty
pick
well.
that because of it?
Well, I picked it because it was so exaggerated,
So
and it was
outrageous, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I just loved it, and he was trying to sell me brushes. You know, I mean, he had this system of what do you call those 3x5 index cards. I mean, he was a pro. He was great, and so, but I just love this oversized. Then it does look like his head. So,
It's a hoot.
and
Yeah,
it's
look,
tough
and the
because
tie, that little short tie.
that's my favorite thing. This is in his living room or dining room where it
Well,
was the only clear, you
and,
know,
and
space.
you have some great focus on that, Annie.
Oh, thanks.
Some good
Well,
focus.
it's the Hasselblad, really.
Yeah.
This is all Kodak, Tri-X. Um, so he was another one. I mean, I love all these. They're all have great stories. This is was a very special afternoon. Um, I can't believe I'm gonna forget his name. I'll remember it. I give me a second. But he's an ecclesiastic painter, and this is in Chinatown in Manhattan, and it's light coming from a skylight up above.
Wow.
And he told us just incredible stories. I was there for I don't know 4 or 5 hours, and he's a very famous painter. Point Park has shown his work several times. Has had exhibits on him. Gosh, I'll think of his name. But like he talked about. He was very religious himself, and he had this experience when he was trying to figure out what to do, and he felt like he was levitated by a natural force. Like it literally picked him up by his neck when he was hesitating whether to do painting. And we were all, I was with a friend, and we were totally engrossed in how he told it and everything. It was an amazing afternoon. And one thing that was interesting is they called him the Dragon of Chinatown, because he never came out. He rarely, I think he lived either on that floor or maybe one floor down from in the elevator, but he rarely came out. But everybody knew that that around where he lived and worked, that he was really famous, for this type of painting. Uh, so I can't. I know his name, but he was great too. And he was on oxygen. There's somewhere in here you can kind of see a little bit. I think the oxygen tank is like behind his leg or something. But and you can kind of see just a little bit. You know how you sometimes have a mark from keeping the oxygen, but he wanted it. I'm pretty sure if I looked at it long enough. But it was another great afternoon with him. Let's see. This is some of you all might know who this is. This is Helen Thomas, and this is at the White House in the press room. Now this doesn't exist anymore. I'm almost 100% sure they've totally redone it. But so she was famous because she always sat in that seat, and she always had the first question. For a press conference with the president, and this is taken from the podium how the president would see her. She was really tough, but she's great. She's super well known in the Washington press corps.
Was that before or after UPI?
Oh, I think it might have been during. Yeah, that's right. You would know her.
During or after?
Maybe it was after. I think you're right, Archie, because she got into a little trouble. Towards the end, she said some pretty inflammatory things, but she was a staple in the press corps.
Well, she looks tough as nails.
She was tough as nails.
My impression of her is just swilling bourbon and chain smoking camels.
I don't know about her personal life, but all the presidents really, I mean, they took a beating from her. She did not mince words or hide how she felt. So she was pretty tough. But they always gave her, I mean, I think it was a good 5 presidents that she always had the first question.
Well, I think that's the tradition that goes to the senior reporter in the room.
Oh, is it still that? I thought they, I don't know. I'm trying to remember if I know she was with Clinton, but she might have been in the beginning of Obama, but I can't remember. If she was her last was either Bush or Obama, a Bush too. So, but yeah, I wanted her to look like that for sure, because that's how she was known. But she wasn't giving up a smile at all, so it didn't matter.
These were all assignments, Annie?
No, these are all self-assigned. None of these are assignments. I found everybody. Either
you were able to get into the press room.
Yeah, it's actually not hard. All you have to do is you request a press pass. You have to send in a social security card, social security number. They do a cursory background check, and then they check your bags. But no, the president wasn't in the room, and it was just the 2 of us. So
she was agreeable to it.
yeah, she was. I don't know if it was skeptical, but she ended up saying yes. So I was really happy.
How do you wind up selling these things, Annie? Like
I'm sorry?
Like that. How do you wind up selling something, especially someone who's sort of semi-famous like that?
Oh, I've never sold them. I've just always, kept plodding away and making a collection of them.
No. I meant, how do you sell the people the idea?
That's
more key to...
I just explained to them what I'm doing. I mean, she's a journalist. She knew, she knows. I told her the story of what I was doing.
Mm.
I mean, some of them, like this guy's Johnny Footman, he's amazing. He was a cabbie in New York. And he was famous for knowing every street in Manhattan. And he was a little tough to convince, but the guys in the uh, what are they like the garage? They convinced him. Um, but mostly it is just talking to people, asking. There's one of James Terrell at the end here. It's one of the last ones. I probably wouldn't have gotten that if I hadn't had the relationship I do with Mattress Factory. And he literally just gave me 3 shots and I switched to a 4x5. But I'll go over that. But usually if you just let people know what you're trying to do, there is one woman I'm trying to photograph right now that I haven't heard back, and I have to figure out how to get to her because I really want to. She is a teacher she was a teacher in Iowa, and she is famous for doing the brown-eyed, black-eyed experiment, where she told the class that people with blue eyes were inferior to brown-eyed people. And her name is Jane. I think her name is Jane Elliott. But I have not heard back from her, and I really want to photograph her because she has been a teacher for that long, for very long. I think she did that. She did that experiment the day after Martin Luther King was assassinated, and she changed her plan and did this, and it became famous. And she's continued to talk on it. So that is a tough one. Like I haven't heard back from her. But usually, a lot of times it's people who I know through somebody, or I'll just call them or something like that. You know, this I just called. I must have heard this one on the radio. When he died, the New York Times did an obituary of him. He really was well known, and I put in 2. I couldn't quite decide. He was famous for his cigars. But and he always wore these houndstooth jackets, which I love. So
And white shoes.
What?
And white shoes.
Exactly. Like, how can you beat that?
It looks like he's going to go on a golf course.
I know, right?
You got to have a thing.
Yeah, I guess so, right? It does help. Photographically, it's great.
So how long ago was this image taken?
It's probably
Ballpark, 10 years?
Yeah, 10, 12 years ago, something like that.
It's a fairly late model vehicle, man. I was just trying to get an idea of how long ago that was shot.
Yeah, it's before Uber. He probably wouldn't have liked that. But I mean, you could definitely look him up. It's Footman, Johnny
What
Footman.
name for a cabbie? He's a footman.
Yeah, right. But
John?
he has a phenomenal story. He was born in Florida, and he got into some argument with a bunch of white guys, and they were trying to kill him. And his mother's like, "Just leave, get out of town." And he went up to New York and never left.
His first name is John?
Yeah, Johnny. I think it's J-O. It's either J-O-N-N-Y or J-O-H-N.
Johnny Footman. Okay, I'm going to look that up. Thanks.
Yeah, I know the New York Times did an obituary on him. This is out in California. This is I think his Bob. I know it's Mitchell, but I'm pretty sure it's Bob Mitchell. He was a silent movie organist, and he is literally like, I don't think it's more than a week that he was in the hospital. He was really old when I took this, and the manager of the movie theater just loved him, and he's like, if you're anytime you can come and play. So he played the organ to the silent movies, and this is I think the only silent movie theater in the country, in Los Angeles. And the manager told me the story that he got out of the hospital another time, and it was in the afternoon, and he made it to the evening show to play, and he loved it. And it's I mean, it was a really rare thing. It's a huge organ, and he plays to the the scene above him.
Yeah, the mighty Wurlitzer.
Yeah, right.
Terrific, Annie. I like the portraits. Really tie it back to him again.
Oh, right, the famous silent movie.
Annie, you know, those guys also had they had a real tough road because sometimes the film would break.
Yeah.
So then they had to come up with something, an interlude
Yes.
to play while that was going. Maybe he told you this.
Yeah, I think he did reference that. Oh, and also they also had intermission.
Yeah.
And I think they had to play through it.
Yeah. So he was going to break.
I know, right? But he loved it. I mean, this is one where I really think it kept him going.
That's a great image.
Yeah, he just absolutely loved to play, and the audience loved him too. They would always give him an ovation. I can't quite remember why I didn't photograph him at the organ, but I think in the end it was just I thought this was more interesting. But
I get exactly what he's doing just by looking at the picture.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, no question.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. All right, this woman. She is a true character. This is above Carnegie Hall, and I absolutely heard about this on NPR. And that's her camera in the back, and she photographed every major star in New York City for decades, from Broadway. And when I walked in, this was tough because her assistant was very protective of her. And when I don't, you might have heard the story. Do you all know Bill Cunningham from the New York Times?
Yes.
Right, this famous fashion photographer. He was her neighbor, and there was one other person who was her neighbor too. But what happened is, I believe in the 50s or 40s, Carnegie Hall gave or rented space above Carnegie Hall to artists, and it was a really good rate, and they lived there, many of them like her, for decades. But she had an even more amazing story that her husband, she had 5 kids, and her husband died, and they all lived there in this. It was a pretty big studio with like a loft thing, but she supported her kids by herself for a long time. But that's her camera back there, and you just see these pictures of like Laurence Olivier and Yul Brynner, and they're just outrageous. You can kind of see them above there. But when I came in, she says, "I want you to know I'm most likely a legend." She was great. So she had a real air about her, but in the end, she was fantastic. But so what the controversy was is Carnegie Hall was moving her out, Bill Cunningham out, and when they were booting these older people out, and in the end, I think they had to help them find another place to live. All right, this is a kind of an interesting story. This guy is an engineer, a nuclear engineer, and this is the first light bulb ever to be lit with, I think is it fission energy, fusion energy? I forget now. Fission, it must be. And he is at a retirement home, but he was a nuclear scientist forever. But he was retired when I took this picture, but he absolutely did what he did for 50 years. And that is one of his projects. He ended up getting a huge prize from the Russian government. Like it was the equivalent of like the Nobel Prize or something like that. So he was famous in his field. But this is just at a retirement home that a friend of mine's parents lived in. And we started talking about this, and they said, "Oh, he was um, a scientist forever." So that was, and I don't know why I had my Hasselblad out there, but I did. So that was a nice bonus. This is Mary Abbott. My sister was her accountant, and it was just this crazy story where someone was uh, supposed to be taking care of her and they weren't, and some relative came into this accounting firm where my sister worked, and it was just crazy. But she used to be a model too, but she's a famous painter, and she literally was on the cover of Vogue magazine when she was like 19 or something. But she was a real character, like just also tough, but a pretty well-known painter. trying to remember who was it that she had an affair with. That it was scandalous when it happened. It was another famous painter, like de Kooning or something like that. But that's out in Southampton. I'm from Long Island, and this is out in Southampton or something like that. This is out in California. This guy gave me literally 3 frames. I have a tiny little tripod on the Maitre D's stand as you come in the restaurant. And this was one where he just had 0 patience. I am not exaggerating. If I got 3 frames off, it was a lot. But this is Musso and Frank, which is a very famous steakhouse out in California. And I literally just walked in there and I said, do you have, because I knew it was a steakhouse forever. I said, do you have anyone that worked here a long time? And they're like, I can't remember his name now, but he was great. I loved him where it was just done. But I think it worked out. It was fun.
I got to get back to work. Stop bothering me.
I know, right? I tried to get there early.
Plus this table.
So the tables aren't set yet.
Yeah. See, I don't even think they were open, but he just had no time for anything like this.
He's full of this.
This is I think it was like Schulte or something, but he was famous. He wrote a book called Cobras in My Garden. And this is in his backyard. He just picked up this snake for this. When I was gone, I do regret that I wish I had taken a garden hose and just like had him hold it like a snake. I mean, it is fun like this, but I just thought, it'd be kind of fun if it was a garden hose. But he had been bitten some crazy amount of times. But that was down in Florida, and he had like a museum that he started that you come in. But there's something I'm not remembering. I should look it up. There's something about the venom that was that he could get it out of the snakes, or I forget what it was. But he was famous for this. And I'm almost 100% sure I heard him on a national story. And he was fine, just coming down and photographing. Really easygoing. And I bet you all know who this is.
Yay!
Barbara Luderowski. And again, I have a bunch of pictures of her looking at me. If you all know, some people might not know, she was the founder of the Mattress Factory. And anyone that ever met her, truly tough as nails. And but she had a really big heart and was just determined to have this great world-class museum. But one thing that struck me about her, I had photographed her for the Post-Gazette for a story, and I knew that she truly cared about everything. And like when she went to get a haircut, and I knew her haircut was important to her. And I just loved the way her hair looked. And she always dressed simple black, red shoes. But we had a nice relationship. We knew each other for a long time. And I was like, Barbara, you're not smiling. I can tell you're not smiling. And so she hated that. But this again was trying to do something not so straightforward, like just trying to stretch a little. And I think it worked with her. And it can't work with everybody, but with her, I felt like it did.
Annie, you probably know this. There's a picture of Bill Moyers that was taken. I'm trying to think of who photographed her. Famous photographer. God's not coming to me. But he's got his hands up under his glasses.
Oh, nice.
You know the picture I'm talking about?
No, I'll look it up.
Yeah, he's got his fingers. He's rubbing his eyes. It's Bill Moyers.
Yeah.
You don't have to, because he's got those iconic glasses, those kind of like aviator kind of big glasses.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where like this, him just by, just by the shape of his face, or, you don't have to see his eyes and his mouth really. He's almost completely covered up with his hands.
Yeah. They're so distinct. Yeah. Locally, it works for Barbara. But even not, it's just compelling that
Well,
You know,
it's neat to photograph that way.
yeah,
You
it
know,
is.
because every 9 times out of 10 you're shooting somebody's face.
Hmm.
When you're doing hands or something like that, it tells a different story,
Right.
different
That's
part of the narrative of that person.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Yeah, and it's just good to change it up too. Just
Absolutely.
yeah. Um, this is a canoe maker out in Hawaii, and I came upon him, um, and we just started talking. And I asked him, could I photograph him? He's like, oh, well, let me clean up, and I'm like, no, please, please do not clean up. So because he's digging out a canoe with his um, instruments or tools. But my favorite part of the picture is that he has obviously sharpened his pencil with, you know, just his big knife. It's just little things like that that I absolutely love. Um, and also the chips that, flying on him. So um, he was great. This is Dick LeBeau. And so what I felt so I have pictures of him on the field and they're dramatic. I'm kind of low and he seems larger than life. But he's known to be a real tough guy too. And so I thought, um, how often do you get to stare into the eyes of Dick LeBeau? So I just asked him to. This is just in like the tunnel outside the practice field. So I just felt like a Pittsburgher would enjoy this, but he has a pretty intense gaze. So um, I was happy to get this. This woman was fantastic. This is up in Alaska, and she was a basket weaver. And I just asked her something silly, and she laughed, and it was complete luck that the wind took her scarf up. And there's plenty of pictures of her just looking at me, and it's interesting, it's real fur around her. This is on a teeny island. Well, it's actually the island's not small, but it's not very populated. In the Bering Sea, it's like a little island, and it was true uh, serendipity luck that happened because it's kind of boring, like everything. But then that happened, so there was just nothing else to look at after that.
You got it there.
She was great. Yeah, that is where I will take that luck. And then this is one of the newer ones that this is an editor of a black newspaper in Richmond. Um, uh, and this is just in the conference room. This is more animated, but than a lot of the ones. But we just had a great talk, and he was really happy to do this. And he is a friend of mine's dad, and that's how I got to know him. But and again, I was just talking to her, and somehow it came up that he'd been doing this forever. Um, so um, it was just a great spot, because sometimes you go and they're just really crammed offices. So I was happy that it had some space and decent light.
Well, it's cool geometry there too.
Oh, thanks. This is the only international one I have, but it is a fascinating story where this man survived Hiroshima, and he was a peacekeeper. He was out to end nuclear proliferation and not to have any nuclear arms. Um, so he had a javelin or some kind of steel rod, I should say, go through his eye. And that's where back here, like, I felt like it matched it, like in the shadow, like it just, seared. He was impaled by this rod. And so he always had the patch. But that was in Japan. And uh, he was intense, but I felt a connection, and I really wanted to include him in these. Even though it's international, I didn't do that very often.
Is he English? Do you speak English?
No. So, um, uh, so this is a kind of a roundabout way. I joined, I'm pretty sure you all know Lynn Johnson. So we're best buddies, and she went to Japan and for a story, and I went with her. And so it was on Hiroshima about it was her story was weapons of mass destruction. And so that's how she met him. But she took a different picture. But I asked if I could photograph him too. So because he devoted his life to it after it happened. So he was amazing. And then this is the last one. I only had 2-3 frames. I just on a whim decided I wanted to do something different. This is just a couple of years ago. And I'm not happy about the backlight. I know it's too much, but I was crazy about the light that is coming out of his heart. Because if any of you know James Turrell, he is all about light. He's an artist that works with light. And so, and I might only have 2 frames. There's a chance it's 3, but I'm almost positive I just got 2 frames off. And he, that's all he wanted to do. But that is an accident. That little.
You did this while you were out of the room too.
What?
So it takes a minute, comes back on. It seems.
So, it's not. I would do it differently. I wouldn't have that hot spot so hot on his cheek right off it. But to me, it's okay. But this I did on that Type 55 film, and I love the keeping the. Normally, you throw away the paper, so I kept that.
I was going to ask, what was your 4x5 of choice?
Oh my gosh, Archie, I don't know. I have it. It's like right in my closet here, but it's it might be Toyo or something. I forget. But it's more the Type 55. I think I have 2 boxes left. So it's wanting to do something special on it. So those are, I have a few others, but there's just one other. I don't know where it is, but that doesn't matter. But that is a project I've been working on forever. And I want to continue it. I have a couple of people here in Pittsburgh I want to photograph. I've asked Mark Parrott if I could photograph him. He's been a photographer for 50 years. And then there's a couple other people here in town. I met a friend of mine met a hairdresser. I'm going to photograph her, hopefully. I have to arrange that. And I really would, I just want to keep going with this. Some years I photograph a few, and then some years I don't. And I just kind of goes in and out. But I've enjoyed working on this for so long.
They're wonderful.
Great project, man.
They are wonderful.
Really,
Thank you, Annie. Really,
Beautiful.
thank you.
I appreciate it very much.
really satisfying for us to see. I feel privileged that we got to see these.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Printed. Have you printed them, Annie?
I've had them printed. So I did have a show at all these weren't in it, but I have had them printed. I will print them for my thesis. I will have a show that I'll print all these.
It would be great, like 30 by 30, I think.
Yeah, that's what they are fun to print big on that big film.
Andy, this is Bill. I think you did a show at the Pittsburgh Filmmakers at the Melwood.
Yeah.
Like 10, 15 years ago, something like that.
It might have been that long ago, Bill. It's scary.
It was a while. Maybe it wasn't 10, maybe it was 8. I don't know. But I remember a couple of these from that.
Uh-huh.
But it was great to see so many more from the series because I think only a few of these ones were in that series.
Yeah.
That you showed. But these are great.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah. I think we cut them down pretty far. It was fun. We did make them larger than life, which was fun to do. To me, it's honoring these people. Oh, you know what's amazing is I have one of my mom. She was a nurse for 50 years. I can't believe she's not in here. This is terrible. So I didn't know she was a nurse for 50 years. And I was telling her when she was alive what I was doing, and she was kind of funny. She's like, "Well, maybe you'll photograph your mother one day." And I was like, "Really?" And I have a oh. Well, it's too bad. I can't believe I didn't put her on there. I'll send the group one. But she graduated from high school early and became a nurse. And they did it differently back then. It's not RN and LPN. It wasn't that. But then she had 10 kids. She was a nurse for 50 years. So she was pretty amazing.
Wow.
So that was pretty great.
And could you take us out of sharing so we can see everybody?
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm going to take this opportunity to stop the recording, but I have one question, but everybody keep talking.
Okay.